Recently, I, a 39-year-old man, discovered that my wife, who I have been with for 14 years and in a relationship with for 17 years, has been unfaithful to me. She has been involved in a relationship with her district manager of Aramark Refreshments for the past 2 years, and I have just found out about it. However, before I delve into the details of this unfortunate situation, I would like to provide some context. I believe it is important to give you all a complete understanding of the circumstances so that you can determine whether or not my wife was justified in her actions, or if I have simply paid off a debt that I owed. Back in 2012, I accompanied my wife to the hospital for a tonsillectomy procedure. As she was not allowed to bring any personal belongings with her into the surgery room, I was given her phone to hold on to. I couldn't help but notice that her phone kept buzzing incessantly with notifications. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to investigate. To my dismay, I discovered numerous inappropriate emails between my wife and another man from her workplace. The discovery was shocking, and my heart sank as I read through the messages. At the time, my wife was reading 50 Shades of Grey, and she was referring to the man as her Christian Grey, a term of endearment that she would often call me. I was filled with anger and frustration, and I wanted answers from my wife about the inappropriate emails that I had discovered. Due to her post-surgery condition, she was unable to communicate with me, leaving me with unanswered questions. On the ride home, I decided to provide her with a pen and a piece of paper, hoping that she would provide me with the answers that I needed. To my complete dismay, all she wrote was, "It was nothing but flirting." I couldn't believe what I was reading. Fueled by anger, I grabbed my 2-year-old child and a suitcase filled with clothes, and I immediately left for a mini vacation in Arizona with my support team, which consisted of my best friend and his wife. I needed time to clear my head and process everything that had just happened. When I returned home, my wife apologized and informed me that she had deleted the emails, assuring me that it would never happen again. Several years had passed, and I found myself still unable to move past the betrayal that my wife had inflicted upon me. The pain and hurt lingered, and I felt as though the only way to move forward was to seek revenge. It was during this time that I met a client who showed me attention and affection. We began texting, and while my wife was out partying with her friends, I would secretly leave my son with my mother and go to see this other woman. Our relationship soon turned into an affair, and before I knew it, I had fallen in love with her. However, after around 9 months, my affair partner informed me that she was pregnant. The first thing that came to my mind was Usher's confession song, and I knew that I had to confess to my wife, which I did. As I mustered the courage to tell my wife that I wanted a divorce, I braced myself for the worst. To my surprise, she took it pretty well. In fact, she even told me that she had an idea and that God was preparing her for that very moment. I couldn't believe my ears. Was she really okay with this? But before I could dwell on it too much, I decided to come clean and tell her about the other woman in my life. I wanted to start a new life with her, I said. To my surprise, my wife didn't lash out at me. Instead, she suggested we work things out. She asked me to go to church more often and get therapy from the pastor. She was confident that all would be great. How could I say no to that? But as I left my wife's house, I knew I had another difficult conversation ahead of me. I had to break the news to the pregnant AP that we weren't going to start a new life together. She had been under the impression that we were going to be together, and I knew this was going to be a difficult pill for her to swallow. After a few months had passed, I discovered that my spouse was expecting a child, with a 3-month gap from the affair partner. She felt the need to solidify her position over the other woman and coerced us into having another child. Suddenly, in December 2014, my family grew from 1 child to 3, and it's been a whirlwind ever since. Despite the chaos, I remain committed to being present for all of my children. As we journey towards the present, I can't help but reflect on the ups and downs my wife and I have experienced. Despite the challenges, I am immensely grateful for the way we are raising our beautiful children. It has been a long and winding road, but I have remained steadfast in my commitment to rebuilding our relationship and remaining faithful to my spouse. Our respective careers sometimes require us to travel out of town, but we have always made an effort to stay connected and committed to each other. But my world was recently turned upside down when I discovered that my wife had been carrying on an affair with her boss for the past 2 years. It was a devastating blow to learn that every happy hour event, every instance of overtime, and every trip to San Diego or Valentine's Day spent in Portland was an opportunity for her to be with him in a hotel room, seeking solace and comfort in his arms. The moment that changed everything for me was one evening when my wife went out for drinks with her colleagues. As she was getting ready to leave, I asked her what time she planned on being home. She responded that she would be back by 9 p.m. As the clock struck 9, I grew increasingly anxious and worried as she was nowhere to be seen. I tried calling her repeatedly, but my calls went unanswered. Finally, I received a text message from her, accompanied by a picture of her female co-worker, informing me that she was just grabbing a few more drinks before heading out. I found it strange that she could text me, but couldn't pick up the phone and talk to me. My suspicions grew even stronger when I zoomed in on the picture and noticed a napkin on the table with a name and address written on it. Without hesitation, I got into my car and drove 45 minutes from home to search for her. When I arrived at the location on the napkin, I was shocked to find my wife in a bar with her boss, his arms wrapped tightly around her. They were both taken aback to see me there, and I was left to confront the harsh reality of my wife's infidelity. As I approached the bar, my wife was quick to say, "Okay, bye," and seemed eager to leave. Confused, I asked her if I had interrupted anything, as I had just arrived. She brushed off my question, informing me that she had closed her tab and was ready to go. Despite her insistence, I remained at the bar with her boss. As the night wore on, her boss became increasingly inebriated and began to confide in me about his marital problems. He spoke of his wife's lack of attention and how they both did whatever they pleased. His words were a stark reminder of the fragility of relationships and the importance of communication and trust. Despite the uncomfortable nature of the conversation, I found myself listening intently, searching for any insight or wisdom that might help me navigate my own marital struggles. Meeting my wife's boss for the first time was an experience I won't soon forget. He was surprisingly forthcoming and asked me if I had ever caught my wife cheating. I replied that I hadn't, but made it clear that if I ever did, the consequences would be dire. Despite his probing questions, I tried to remain cordial and polite, not wanting to make a scene. As the night wore on, I noticed that my wife's boss was becoming increasingly intoxicated, ordering drink after drink. What struck me as odd, however, was the fact that my wife kept calling him on his phone, interrupting our conversation. I couldn't help but feel suspicious and uneasy about their relationship. Things took a turn for the worse when her boss abruptly got up from the table and left the bar, claiming that he needed to use the restroom. I was left alone with my thoughts and a growing sense of unease. When I finally left the bar and returned home, I confronted my wife about her behavior. She apologized for not telling me that her boss would be joining them, but I knew there was more to the story. Driven by a sense of suspicion and unease, I decided to check her phone records. What I discovered left me reeling. My wife had been talking to her boss for 30 minutes every day after work, Monday through Friday. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks, and I knew that our relationship would never be the same again. Armed with the damning phone bills that extended as far back as 2 years, I confronted my wife about her suspicious behavior. Her response was a well-crafted lie. She explained that she had to stay late at work to complete end-of-day reporting, and her boss needed those numbers to report to his own superiors. It was a plausible explanation, But something about it just didn't sit right with me. As I dug deeper, I discovered that her explanation didn't quite hold up. My wife wasn't a salaried employee and was required to clock in and out, meaning that reporting numbers after clocking out would be considered illegal from an HR standpoint. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together, but I needed more concrete evidence to confirm my suspicions. That's when I decided to record their conversations. It wasn't something I was proud of, but I knew it was necessary to get to the bottom of things. Due to the sensitive nature of the situation, I will refrain from disclosing the means by which I obtained this information, but upon learning of the content of their exchanges, I felt a deep, visceral pain that seemed to shatter my heart into a million minuscule fragments. I found out that she participated in numerous conversations with her cousin, during which she talked in detail about the many ways in which her boss brought excitement and joy into her life. It was not merely a physical connection that they shared, she affirmed, but rather a deep and meaningful bond that was rooted in a shared sense of humor and playfulness. In a particularly cutting and cruel moment, she derided me for my gullibility in believing that her end-of-day phone calls were genuine, her words stinging like 1,000 wasps. She went on to say that they would have to be cautious and discreet for a time, uttering the phrase, "Where there's a will, there's a way," with a sly smirk on her face. The final nail in the coffin, however, was the conversation I overheard between the two of them, in which they spoke openly and intimately about their feelings towards each other and the intense emotional connection they shared. It was clear to me that I had been utterly and completely deceived, caught in the crosshairs of their deceit and betrayal. Deep within me, a fury burned with an intensity that I had never before experienced. I was at a loss as to how to proceed. Should I take this matter to their HR department? My wife had recently been promoted, but should I reveal the true reason behind her success and expose her illicit affair with her boss? I racked my brain, searching for a solution until I finally settled on a plan of action. I reached out to his wife, conducting extensive research with the assistance of a close friend who is always eager for a bit of drama. I found her on LinkedIn and waited with bated breath for her response. When she finally contacted me, I laid bare everything I knew, providing a clear timeline of events that revealed the extensive and ongoing affair that had been taking place for years. It was a bitter pill to swallow, realizing that we had both been played for fools while they had been living it up. We even arranged a four-way call, but despite the recorded proof, they persisted in denying everything. After much effort, they both finally came clean, revealing the full extent of their transgressions. This left me with a difficult choice to make. Should I stay in the marriage for the sake of the children, or should I leave her now that my debts from my past mistakes have been paid? Although she is begging for me to come back, I have moved out and taken on the responsibility of taking the kids to school every morning. She continues to work under her lover, and though she swears that nothing will happen again, how can I trust her after 2 years of infidelity? She allowed him to penetrate both her heart and her pants, and I am left unsure whether this toxic and unhealthy marriage can be salvaged. Should I take action against the district manager for his role in all of this? What is my next step? I know that 2 wrongs do not make a right, and I am seeking advice from anyone who has successfully kept their family together for the sake of their children.